Right now, Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
All right, thanks a lot, guys, and thank you for tuning in to the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. I'm Rich Walsh. I'll be joined by Chris Mueller from 93.7 The Fan in a matter of moments, and there he is right now looking great. Chris, speaking of looking great, how about those Pitt Panthers? One question I have right now, what is Eli Holstein doing running the ball up 30-some points?
A strange decision, admittedly. I was in the car listening on 93.7 The Fan to the call, and the guys weren't confused necessarily by the fact that he was running it. They were surprised, I guess, obviously, that he got hurt. So I didn't see it. Was it his eye that he was poked in his eye? I don't know. Was it like a Three
I'm not
Stooges
sure what
play?
happened there. I thought it was his shoulder at first, and I think it's maybe a concussion. I was in the studio, or headed to the studio when it happened. I just saw that he left the game and Nate Yarnell went in. So hopefully it's nothing serious. The Steelers, I keep saying the Steelers. The Panthers don't play here this weekend.
They get a 10-day break, so they got a little extra time for him. It's honestly, the game's not over, but a virtuoso defensive performance. I give Pat Narduzzi a ton of credit. I'll start by saying that because I have pointed out that one of the inconvenient truths of his tenure here is that his best teams, so you figure the team in 2016, Canada's offense, Peterman running it, the Kenny Pickett team, those are the two standout groups. Those two teams have been defined by their offense. In fact, that Peterman team beat Syracuse 76-61 in one of the funniest games I have ever witnessed at a football field. This is a team that suddenly is going to be 7-0 because their defense has carried the mail for them 2 successive weeks. You know, Pitt beats Cal mainly because their defense stands tall when they absolutely had to. And then their defense, barring a late score by Syracuse, is going to outscore Syracuse offense in this game. It was a genius game plan by Narduzzi. They had Kyle McCord completely flummoxed pretty much the entire time, and he came in with gaudy numbers. Just a lot of props to Pat Narduzzi, his defense doing some work.
And Kyle McCord, there were a lot. I was over there for the first quarter before I had to come back here. There were a ton of NFL scouts there for a couple guys, or a few guys, but he was one of the guys that I think a lot of those scouts were paying attention to. Not a good game to have 5 interceptions and 3 pick sixes.
No, and again, I think Pat Narduzzi baited him into some of this. The screen pass they had scouted right before the half, he just throws it into a wall of bodies. An out route that Pitt jumps that he has no business throwing. They run like a dog blitz and a linebacker drops back and McCord throws it essentially right to him. Sometimes you can chalk up interceptions as spectacular individual plays or bad luck for the quarterback. I really felt in this case, this was Pat Narduzzi, Randy Bates just completely outfoxing the Syracuse offensive staff and definitely confusing a quarterback that came in averaging 360 yards a game. I mean, it is not the kind of thing you expect to see happen in any game in college football, but I just give Pitt full marks because assuming Holstein is healthy, you have to start liking the way this team is looking from sort of a 360-degree perspective. They can win in a variety of ways.
Yeah, especially when the linebackers are making those interceptions. You don't see that too often, and running it back for touchdowns. One thing, you brought up Holstein again, and we talked about him at the beginning of the show. But if he's not healthy, this is the game coming up. The SMU game was the scary game for me. Going to SMU, and if you don't have Holstein, I'm not too confident about that game.
If their defense plays this way, I think they're going to be in there against any team. They were lethal against the run tonight. Syracuse really could not do anything on the ground. Underrated part of this game, I thought so far, was really Pitt's ability in man coverage on the outside with their corners. I know the backers were the ones picking off passes and taking them back for touchdowns, but Pitt's corners have just been all over these Syracuse receivers in man coverage. That's allowed them to dial up some of this exotic stuff. So with the defense playing like that, I absolutely think they can be a team that beats SMU even on the road. If Holstein's healthy, I thought the little bit of time he was getting in the second half, he was starting to look more like himself again. So if he's healthy, then I really like their chances. I mean, they are a good football team. I know it's uncomfortable if you're a Pitt fan to take that posture, but this team's going to be 7-0, and that means they're a good team. They're blowing out, I think, a team that's probably the best one that they've faced so far this year, at least on paper. That's what good teams do. They handle their business and flex their muscles a little bit.
All you have to do is tell your partner, Andrew Filipponi, to make a prediction that SMU is going to run away with it big time.
I'm going to be feasting. I might have somebody put a bucket underneath him so all his tears, I can make a potion, a concoction out of that. His tears will be delicious tomorrow because he predicted 31-30. Kyle McCord hands Pitt a loss. I will say, Pony called him the nation's best pocket passer in that tweet. And at the start of the game, he was proving that by distributing the ball very evenly to both teams. He had 3 completions to Syracuse at one point and 3 completions to Pitt defenders, 2 of which went for touchdowns. So you really have a hard time questioning the guy's bona fides when he's making sure everybody, all the other 21 guys in the field, have a chance to catch his passes.
Well, this is our GMC tweet of the night. I was going to make Pony's tweet of the night, but we picked this one instead. The Pitt football team is the only FBS team in the last 25 years to return 3 interceptions for touchdowns in the first half of a game. It's pretty impressive. I thought 2 pick sixes were impressive, Chris, but then I heard on the loudspeaker when I was over at Pitt that it happened in 2022, and I totally forgot about that, so it was only 2 years removed. But 3, that's a pretty good one. Maybe we can get 4 here in the last couple minutes.
I mean, the fact that Pitt did this is the only, I think, ACC team or team in the country to have picked sixed a team twice in the first quarter of a game. They did it against Virginia. That's the game you're referencing in 2022 is wild. I do think, as much as you would have maybe, I guess, liked to have seen their offense look a little more in rhythm, they hardly had a chance. They were barely on the field. I want to say when Syracuse finally got a touchdown, that drive took them over 9.5 minutes to finally punch it in. That was about the exact length of time that Pitt had the ball the entire game to that point. So this defense being this strong for Pitt is a really encouraging sign.
Yeah, Eli Holstein, before he left, people were speculating concussion. I don't know. I have just seen that on Twitter, and you look at it, so we don't know anything. But he was 11 of 15 for 108 yards and 2 touchdowns. So they need Holstein back for that SMU game for sure. Let's go to Jim and Peters. How you doing, Jim?
Yeah, this team's legit. I graduated from Pitt in '75, so I was there with the high standards when Tony Dorsey was there. I love the defense. Holstein's a stud. And I'll tell you what, I'm happily surprised. I mean, I can see them running the table here.
Wait, why'd you call him a joke? You bet Syracuse?
No, he said they're legit.
No, you said legit. I thought you said they were a joke, and that's why I kind of turned my head. I was like, what is he talking about? This team's pretty good right now. I'm finally having fun as a Pitt fan, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to have a game. I cited this in the open to the show. It's nice to have a game where the spread seems a little large. You get kind of that itchy feeling like, why are they favored by this much? They could absolutely get beat. In the past, this is absolutely the kind of game they've stubbed their toe. So to deliver what really, regardless of the final score, Syracuse might tack on another cosmetic touchdown here in the second half in the waning moments of the fourth quarter. This might be a 3-touchdown win for Pitt, but the fact that they've come out and absolutely dominated is really impressive. As long as Holstein's healthy, obviously I give him a good chance to beat SMU. Virginia would be a classic Pitt trap game, but I feel like Narduzzi's done a pretty good job of avoiding those pratfalls. And then you get Clemson, and Clemson, after getting throttled by Georgia, has looked a lot better. They've gotten up off the deck. Man, would that be one heck of a powerhouse matchup on November 16th if you have a 9-0 Pitt team coming in there to defend their turf against a Clemson team that, if they don't lose between now and then, would probably be in the top 5. Pitt would probably be in the top 8 at that point at 9-0. That would be something to behold.
I would love to see it, and it's achievable. It's not out of the realm of possibility that Pitt could win these next few games and be undefeated when it's facing Clemson, and that would be one of the better games we've seen at Acrisure Stadium in a long time. All right, let's switch gears a little bit to the Steelers. Is Russell Wilson making this offense better? Do you think with opening it up a little bit more? Is he making George Pickens better? Is he making Pat Freiermuth better? Or did he just have a good second half?
I think he is giving them the chance to be a lot better, mainly because the head coach of the football team trusts him to do certain things that allow an offense to function more smoothly so long as the quarterback makes the right checks. And by that I mean Mike Tomlin's allowing him to make checks at the line of scrimmage, to get them into different plays. That's why we heard that Coors Light call that everyone was laughing about when you could hear him barking one of his audibles. So, you know, it's hard to rip Tomlin too much right now. They went 4-2 with Fields, and he seemed to handle that pretty well. His defense really betrayed them in at least one, if not both of those losses. I guess he looks like a very smart guy for feeling like he had to keep some of the training wheels on Fields, which might have stunted their offense but also prevented turnovers. And now it looks like he's ready to turn the full keys of this thing over to Russell Wilson, as far as give the 35-year-old guy the agency to get out of plays based on what he sees. So I think in that sense, they should be able to handle a little bit more of what defenses throw at them. I don't think their offense should stagnate. What they do need is a second wide receiver to pair with George Pickens, though. And I'll tell you what, I was looking at that, keeping tabs on Rams-Vikings. It looks like the Rams have a very good chance to win that football game, Richie. If they do, then that far lessens the likelihood that they're going to want to make Cooper Kupp available to anybody, because at 3-4, if they win this game, they're going to feel like they have as good a shot as anybody, and they do, in the NFC West. So Omar Khan's task is find another receiver to pair with Pickens to give Russell Wilson somebody else to look for.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Cooper Kupp, because I was just going to ask you about him. You know, I know Mike Tomlin doesn't like to speak in hypotheticals, but I do. What would you do? What would you give up to get Cooper Kupp here?
The absolute most I would give up is a conditional third that could become a second if and only if he plays really well and they advance far in the playoffs. The idea of paying a second-round pick straight away, even if they're eating a chunk of his salary in L.A., to acquire a player who, counting now tonight, will have played in, I think, 21 of their last 41 or 42 games, that just seems like an unnecessary risk. The guy has gotten hurt a bunch since that all-time great Tour de Force season he had in 2021. I would say conditional third, because at least then, if it ends up becoming a second, you know you got a lot out of the player. You know that as a team, you went very far. But again, I will stress that there are other options that are going to be out there. Zay Jones is somebody who's available. I've said Darius Slayton's name enough that people are very sick of hearing me bring it up.
Yeah.
But there are multiple players that are going to be made available, I think, that could at least give the Steelers somebody more productive than Van Jefferson.
You know, maybe a Christian Kirk, too. Are any of these guys better than Van Jefferson? Are those guys, in your opinion, worth?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Well, they're all. Hold on now. You're asking two different questions. If they're worth whatever a team's going to ask for, depends on what the team's asking for. If the question is very simple, is player X that's available in a trade better than Van Jefferson? My answer in almost every case is going to be yes. Van Jefferson's been a pretty capable blocker. I know he caught a touchdown. I know he's probably in an offense that if he was in a better one, he could have a little bit more in the way of numbers. He put up numbers with the Rams one time for one season, but in this offense, he's not dynamic enough on his own to be what they need him to be. So pretty much any of those names that you or I could throw out are upgrades over him.
And what would it take to get one of those guys? Fifth, sixth round pick, something like that?
I think a fifth or a sixth gets you Slayton. If Mike Williams is made available from the Jets, I think a sixth or a seventh. Seventh probably gets that done. He's injury prone too. Slayton is an interesting one only because the Steelers can directly affect how New York views the rest of their season. Steelers bury them on Monday night, then guess what? You might find a team that's more willing to play ball on dealing a guy like Darius Slayton if they are completely out of the race in what's a pretty crowded NFC. I really do think if the Rams win that they are going to probably go week by week and take Cooper Kupp off the block, and that eliminates a big name. So I think most of these guys that are going to be realistic pickups have to be had for a fourth or a fifth or a sixth rounder, and you just hope change of scenery helps them out.
Well, I think the Steelers will evaluate things over the next couple of weeks before this trade deadline, which is Election Day, coming up very soon. You don't have a lot of time. You have one game. But my question would be, can Russell Wilson, is he good enough to make a Van Jefferson or Calvin Austin good? Or are these guys just not getting open because they can't get open?
I mean, they got Jefferson open for a touchdown because Pickens basically ran a subtle pick play and it didn't get called, and Jefferson's running 5-6 yards free right at the goal line. Wilson just doesn't work a ton over the middle of the football field, so I think you have to think of that when you think of Calvin Austin, because most of his biggest plays, including the one this year, have happened right over the hash marks. you have to find a guy. And Cooper Kupp, I understand why he was appealing. He would line up in the slot, but the Rams would run him on a ton of out routes, like stuff where he was running towards the numbers. That's the stuff Russell Wilson seems to really like to throw. So you probably have to find somebody who, if you say, like, can Russell Wilson elevate them, does that player do the majority of their work in the middle of the football field, or do they do it on the outside? If they're on the outside, then yeah, I think Russell Wilson's proven throughout his career that he can really get it going when he's throwing to the boundary. But if it's down the middle, if it's a guy who's primarily been working between the hash marks, I think you have to make a serious value judgment as to whether or not Russell Wilson's going to get the most out of that player.
I mean, I would love to see Cooper Kupp here. I think he's the perfect complement to George Pickens. He's a guy that gets open all the time. That's a guy I think that they would need to get in this offense. I worry. I like the conditional third round if that's something that you could do. But then, do you even care about what you're dealing with after this year, or do you think the window is right now to win? Do what you can to get the guy in here.
I mean, they clearly think that the window is right now. I don't believe Cooper Kupp puts them above a Buffalo or a Baltimore or probably even Houston or Kansas City, of course. Certainly Kansas City, Buffalo, and I would say Baltimore, because that offense just looks like it's from another planet right now, Richie. But yeah, it doesn't almost matter what I think. Like, I want to see them look like a better football team. I would love for, let me put it this way, I would love for my critique of whatever move they would make to be, oh yeah, it makes them better. They could probably win a playoff game depending on the matchup, but I still wouldn't pick them over X, Y, and Z. I'd love to just be in a position where they're like in the divisional round actually playing one of those games. We've been out here walking in the desert looking for an oasis since 2017, since the 2016 playoffs here. I would love to be complaining that I didn't think that they were good enough to actually beat one of these elite teams, because maybe they'd actually have a chance to do it this time around.
Yeah, I remember. I was there for their last playoff win. Chris, we don't have a lot of time, 20 seconds. Who do you like in the Steelers-Giants Monday night matchup?
It should be Steelers by a lot, and I think what it's going to end up being is like Steelers by 10, something like 24-14. So that's what I'll go with, even though I'll probably change my opinion on the air come Monday.
We're on the same page this week. Unlike last week, I like 26-12. Thanks a lot, Chris. We'll see you next week, same time, same place. Hopefully we see you guys on KDK News right now.